It's Friday, September 24th, and you are listening to The Drive. Catherine, I mixed it up there. It wasn't exactly how I always do it. I just get bored. I gotta have some little variety in my life. But I think that was just amazing, and our audience now is going, damn it, what more excitement is in store for us? We started off that way. We could only go uphill from here, downhill. I don't know. It can only get better. How's that? Let's go with that. How you doing?
Good. It's raining. I'm in Toronto, as you know, and it's been raining for almost 2 days in a row. For me, I would rather have snow than rain. It's the water that falls from the sky. It's way too cold. So yeah, this is the beauty of a good lamp, because my days are gray.
Gray.
How about you?
It's funny you say that, because I'm in front of it's probably I'm going to guess a 42-inch square window, like literally smack dab in front. It's a massive window. And, which, by the way, folks, I don't recommend, because it's not great for acoustic, because your sound bounces off yet, but that's an aside. And the premise being, you get all this wonderful sunlight coming in, and your life is good. But to your point, on days like today, which are great here for me as well, or if the sun comes in and out, you look like you're bright, then you're not, and you're bright, and then you're not. So even though I'm in front of a big window, I also have two lamps shining upon me. So they're a key. If I was wondering, it's the Elgato Key Light Airs I have. That comes up often. Although in my office, I have the Elgato Key Light Standard. Anyway, whole different story. Catherine, this week coming up, for the first time in what seems like decades, maybe centuries, there's an actual in real life, in-person event we all know as SaaStr. And it's taking place. It's in San Francisco. And it is, if you're wondering, the world's #1 place for cloud and SaaS founders, VCs, and executives, all in person. 3 full days, hundreds of workshops, thousands of mentoring sessions. This is the place to go. And, I can just see by the registration numbers, because they always say, if you look at it, how many have signed up in the last week. It's like, I think it says like 1,000 people have signed up in the last week. That's just the last week. This is the big thing. Of course, it's San Francisco, Silicon Valley, the home of SaaS, the home of Salesforce.com, which is kind of the poster child for starting the whole SaaS movement way back when SaaS was a bad word, because no one wanted SaaS, because, hey, that's subscription. I want to own the software. What are you thinking? Anyway, here we are. Are you going? No.
I wish I would, if I'm honest with you, because that one definitely looks extremely promising in terms of that level of conversations that will take place. And I've seen just a lot of postings as well around, the event and who's going and who's obviously looking forward for it. So I'm kind of jealous. Maybe next time.
Well, Lisa, if you're wondering, for those who don't know, if you're new to the space, this is the event. We've looked multiple times ourselves at actually exhibiting there. And I will tell you right now, to exhibit is exorbitant. And I've never done it. And a lot of my peers have. And those are peers in the space who are, of course, venture capital funded, which somewhat makes sense. We're not, for all intents and purposes. And so I think the starting point for like a tiny, teeny, tiny little booth. Do not quote me on this one, folks. It's been since 2019 since I got pricing. It was like $60,000. And I'm like, if I'm a startup, would I drop $60,000 to go to a show to exhibit when it is 100% not my target audience? These are, because I'm typically selling to, executives, in our case, sales leadership, revenue ops leaders, and marketing leaders. I'm not selling my wares to venture capitalists. I'm not selling my wares to other speakers or influencers. And yet they do it. They pack it all the time. I don't get it. To me, it says a lot of these companies have way too much funding if they can afford that. Just me speaking as a guy who owns the budget, it kills me. But it is big. 10,000 executives, they're saying, founders and VCs are going to come together this year. And they're saying that's live and in person. So they are qualifying it. But it's crazy. So folks, check it out. SaaStr Annual 2021.com. SaaStr, of course, SAASTR. SaaStr Annual 2021.com. You will not see Catherine nor I there, but we're with you there emotionally and virtually in love and support. And we wish you well. It's a great place to go, though, if you want to meet the funders and VCs and you want to pitch them. That's the place to go, man. Okay, that's that. So let's move into our usual, diatribe agenda of items here. Next up on the list is money, money, money. All right. So, Catherine, this was interesting. So we got a couple people got money this week. One through a Series C and one through an IPO. Now, what's interesting about this stuff is this. Let's start with the IPO one first. Company called Toast. Toast. Now, Toast is restaurant software. That's what it is. Restaurant software. I don't know the specifics of what it does, but I love the name, restaurant software. Toast. It's just so very freaking cool. So they were slated to go IPO, and lo and behold, it happened. Now, what's interesting, what was noteworthy about this, and this news came out a little bit ago, just a couple of things, right? So they got kind of, as you might imagine, they got hammered by the pandemic. They had to do some quick shuffling of assets and staffing and resources, because if you're a restaurant software and there's no restaurants open, that tends to affect you. But 10 days ago or so, they had filed their S1A. And they were targeting an IPO range of between $30 and $33 a share. That would lead them to a max fundraise of $825 million. That was what they were targeting. Now, just over a year and a bit ago, early 2020, maybe a year and a half, they were valued at $4.9 billion. All right. And that's when they raised $400 million in capital. So that's it. So what happened? Well, I'm glad you asked. I have the answer, because think about it. They were valued at 4.9 billion, and they were targeting between 10 and 20, but like 20 was on the extreme end. Well, when they went out, they blew past what their expectations by 56%. That's not a bad little thing. And they actually ended up being valued at $20 billion. $20 billion. It's just nuts. It's just absolutely nuts. Now, the nice thing for them, which is really interesting, is a different way to come to the pandemic. Because things started coming back, restaurants, of course, opened up. And therefore, their annual recurring revenue, their ARR, surged. This is the word that is in the press story. Surged 118% in the second quarter from a year earlier to almost $500 million. So if you're on a surge because things are opening back up, that's the time to go public, baby. That's what I got to say to you. So just curious. By the way, if you're wondering, they raised $870 million. So they exceeded their expectations just by a wee bit. Catherine, how much stock did you have in them? Are you now rich? And do you have Toast software at your house to serve to take orders from the kids and the spouse? Like, how does this work in the Robles household? I'm just curious.
Oh my God, I should. You're
Why don't
actually
you?
into something very interesting here for all moms around, right? I think that, funny enough that you mentioned it that way, is because talking to other moms around the pandemic, one of the biggest challenges that we had with having the kids at home was their constant demands for snacks, right? While they're at school, they only eat whatever they take and they're fine. When they are at home, it's like every 20 minutes,
I'm bored. Nothing to eat.
I'm hungry. This thing would have just cut it, right? Because it's the point of sale. So, all right, you're hungry. You can put here your order and pay for it, and I'll get it done for you with the needed time. And I bet you my kids wouldn't spend their money in that, and they will just go in and get their stuff done. So you're into something, Daryl. I really like these story, obviously, because it's just a proof as well of resiliency after a company that had to chop their workforce for almost half when the pandemic hit and the restaurants were out of service. So that part is really interesting for me. And then obviously just the model that they have, right? So they have the software. And funny enough, I was reading as well, and the software portion of it doesn't really bring all the revenue in, not even half of it. It's more the payment side of it. So these guys are really touching on different areas that, you know, are just simply interesting. And to your point, now that everything's going back, and all restaurants, regardless of how big or how small they are, have been forced to go in digital, right? The digital transformation again. This company has no stop, I feel.
It's kind of like the Shopify of restaurants. You talk about getting the revenues from the transactions, all right? Shopify, here's a complete turnkey, platform to put on your own e-commerce store so you can sell those lovely, ugly Christmas sweaters you knit all year long, or whatever knickknacks or craftery that you produce, and they take a piece of the action. And that's just like the gift that keeps on giving forever and ever and ever. So it is a good model. I agree. So hats off to Toast. Now, the other one on the money. PandaDoc, the second one, this week will be just two. PandaDoc, they're a document workflow automation and electronic signing platform. So basically, if you're in the software world, you would probably use a DocuSign or maybe a PandaDoc to get your sales contract signed. But there's all sorts of paperwork that needs to be signed, right? Whether it's legal contracts or whatever. So this is what they do. And they've got over 30,000 revenue. I love how they put this, recurring revenue customers. In other words, that's fancy. Recurring revenue customers means they pay, as opposed to it's using their free version of the product. In 130 countries around the world, in the most recent year, they've grown 80% in user count and 63% in revenue. That's a good thing. But they do have a free product. They call it Forever Free eSign. And they actually launched that at the start of the pandemic, which I think is freaking brilliant. I'll give them full credit in that one, because if everyone at home, no one's in the office. I can't walk it over to the lawyers or walk it over to so-and-so, sign this. So we need something. So that was brilliant. But this is what I find interesting. So congratulations to PandaDoc. They're now a unicorn. Catherine, they are now valued at $1 billion. That's the magic number. They raised a whole bunch of money, but here's where it gets interesting. Did they? Because I don't really know. Because everywhere I look, it says, and I'm on the PandaDoc site right now. I've gone to TechCrunch and other places. They've announced a Series C financing. But for how much? We know that they tell us the valuation, but they don't tell us how much. And that's just a red flag, because either that means they're in distress or it means they didn't get much and it's just a news release. I don't know what it means. I'm left wondering. I want to know. Catherine, how much? Tell me.
It's the second one in a row to do exactly the same announcement. Oh yeah, we got some money. We're not telling you how much.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, why? To your point, right? These guys are just simply interesting on why they are not sharing that part. And if I'm not mistaken, they're not even yet sharing kind of what are the next plans, to give us a bit of idea as well on when they're planning on, or where they are planning on investing or utilizing these, entry. So we just need to keep a close eye on it.
I agree. So that was our good friends at PandaDoc. So regardless, you're a unicorn. And I'm taking nothing away from you. Congratulations, kids. You made it. With that, let's move on to corporate affairs. All right. Catherine.
Daryl.
You may recall recently we had a conversation where Lessonly was acquired by Seismic, if I recall. But Lessonly, under the umbrella of Seismic, is now doing their first big event post-acquisition. And they call it the Better Work Conference. And it's entirely free. And if you've never heard of it, I love the play on this. It's called Yellow Ship. By the way, just because, one of their colors is, yellow, and yellow ship rhymes with fellowship, which I think is brilliant. Yellow Ship 21. It's the Better Work Conference. 100% online, taking place October 5th and 6th. You want to check out more on that, go to lessonly.com/yellowship. A very cryptic URL. And basically, as they say, Yellow Ship is a place for trainers, managers, and coaches, because, hey, Lessonly it's a learning platform, to learn from some of the world's best innovators. So they've got some great marquee keynote speakers. I mean, they've got Kai Knight. He's a violinist and an innovative composer, not just a composer. No. Nay. He's an innovative composer. That Jill Ellis, former head coach of the U.S. women's national soccer team. Former, just like Donald Trump is the former president of the United States. But anyway, that's an aside. They've got Carla Harris, chairman and managing director of Morgan Stanley. Whoop, whoop. Love when I see a woman in power like that. That's fantastic. They've got some amazing speakers. And there you go. So it's virtual only because they care about your health. 1,500 people. You should join. So if you're in the whole learning space, if you're in sales enablement, if you're in human resources, whatever, you make content possibly even, training content, for example, this is definitely something for you. But in the same breath, no matter where you are in your career, check out the lineup because we can all learn more. So, Catherine, will you be committed to pursuing your Yellow Ship?
I don't even know why I coughed, but it was a natural reaction.
It was a natural because you're choked up. I have that effect. I understand.
I don't know how to get your question right now, but I do believe that this is a great event. Everything that is about empowering and talent management and really getting people to the next level, I love it. I think that's the only way to really generate any change in the world. So,
well, I'm looking.
I would actually like to be part of these Yellow Ship events.
You should check it out.
Yeah, I think it's worth really, as you mentioned, checking it out. It's not only about providing content, but also that mentorship, right? How to connect the resources and align people with internal folks to help them develop their profession, their career, achieve their goals in a much more holistic manner than only with the manager and focusing on the next quick step. So, yeah, pretty interesting.
I will approve the money to spend for you to attend Yellow Ship, Catherine. I just want you to know that. On Twitter, Kyle Lacey's got a great, he posted something here. He says, last time I attended Yellow Ship, now remember Kyle Lacey was the head of marketing at Lessonly. Last time I attended Yellow Ship, I watched an entire room cry during our last keynote. And another guy I quite respect, Ed Kalman, he's saying, I can't wait to attend my first Yellow Ship. I've heard really good feedback from customers who attended in the past. It's worth your time. Check it out. So there you go, folks. We don't just talk about what's in the news. We talk about what you need to do to make yourself a better, more informed, well-rounded, more capable, more successful individual. There you have it. Now, let's move on over to we've talked about these guys before, Lavender. Lavender, if you don't know Lavender, I just like saying lavender. Lavender is, of course, a tool that you can use to write, very compelling sales emails. Or they probably don't have to be sales emails. Maybe you can write them to, send an anonymous note to that individual across the coffee shop whom you quite fancy. Whatever. Use Lavender. Check it out. And the co-founder of Lavender, Will Allred, he's bringing on a couple of advisors. Two, in fact. So one is Christina Finseth. So that's cool. And the other one is Kyle Coleman. So both of these people actually have a fair amount of email experience, which is perfect for what they do. But what I think for me, what made this really notable in corporate affairs is how when I find the smart companies are the ones that continue to grow and expand their board of advisors, their board of advocates. I'm not the board of advocates. They're advocates, they're champions, and the ones that recognize that they need to grow and learn more. Like here, Will said, talking about Kyle specifically, he said, Kyle leads by example. He promised to give feedback on every cold email he gets, which is true. That's how we connected on Lavender. He inspired me to do my one-on-one coaching. Don't just talk about coaching, writing, go do it. So, and he said that's had a profound impact on him. So both Kyle and Christina, great advisors, but I think it's a sign of a strong company, honestly, and a strong leadership team when you do that. So, maybe Catherine, I need you to be my advisor now. Can you join my board of advisors and be my advisor? I need you to inspire me, motivate me, and make me a better person.
I'm sorry, I need to pass on the offer. However, I do want to say two things on these matter. The first one is I'm so surprised by the amount of updates these days on folks becoming advisors of other businesses. I would like to better understand that model, right? I understand that, obviously that connection comes out of the value, comes out from, possible mentorship that has been happening in the past. So now bringing that person makes sense because it'll just amplify their impact, will help, in this case, will help the product be much better just because you have different set of eyes, right? And we also haven't heard about that support system. So having your own personal advisors, group of advisors, right? Again, the whole idea behind it is to have diversity in thought and then be able to be better 1% every single day. But I still am curious to know kind of the whole push these days for being at such a big thing every single day. Everyone is like, oh, I'm becoming an advisor of these. I'm becoming an advisor of that. And for these two guys, I get it. The whole alignment makes full sense. But there are some that I'm like, I just don't understand exactly how that works and what's that end result everyone is going after. So yeah, that's kind of my take on the advisors. And then obviously, again, on these two folks that are coming, both Christina and Kyle are just extremely, open in terms of sharing their experience and sharing their take at what best practices look like, still empowering people to be themselves. So not necessarily saying like, hey, here's your template, go and use it. It's more like, these are the guidelines. This is what you should be taking into consideration to write better emails to sound a lot less needy and desperate, right? Which is one big thing that obviously in sales can easily be seen across the messages that you get randomly in your inbox. So
needy, desperate. Sounds like when I was dating my wife. With that said, I have to answer your question. Right. Whenever you raise money, which of course that's for a lot of startups, that's the model, right? You want your seed round, then you want Series A, Series B, Series C, Series D. Often the hardest part you're going to have, having gone through this several times myself, is getting the lead investor. Because the lead investor is the one that kind of says, this is a good investment. They basically take all the risks. And then everybody else will follow on. So maybe the lead investor says, well, I'll give you 50 million. And everybody else says, okay, I'll give you 5, I'll give you 5, I'll give you 5, I'll give you 5. And that way the lead investor has anointed the deal as blessed. And that way all the other smaller investors can say, well, the lead investor says it's good. They've done their homework. Therefore, if this tanks and we lose our $5 million, it's not our fault. It's the lead investors because they said it was good. I'm making things really simplified, but you get the gist. And often how they get around those trust issues, those concerns, and deal with them in advance is by having a who's who of known names to make sure that the company has the most likelihood of success. And that's where advisors come in. So if the investor says, oh, I know Kyle, I really like him. If Kyle's working with them, then I trust Kyle. That sounds stupid. But so yes, they add advice, and that's the number one reason why you should do it. But don't kid yourself. Advisors also serve an additional role of shaping and validating the company for future investments. So there you go. Speaking of startups, because we were just speaking of startups, Amy Volas had an interesting tweet recently, and she said, "What's your definition of a startup?" Seems pretty simple. I just saw a top 10 startups list, and many of them couldn't be further from how I think about what a startup is. Now, what's interesting about this, I'll share some. Scott Leese jumped on here. Scott and Amy, of course, of Thursday Night Sales, so that would make perfect sense. And Scott says, to me, they're before Series C, so maximum Series B. They're under 50 million in ARR. They're under 300 employees, and they're tech companies only. That's off the cuff. It may not be well thought out, but what do you think? And some of the responses were really, really interesting. I jumped in and I said, that's a great answer, except there's a lot of companies out there who could be 5, 10 years or older who completely fit that profile. Are they a startup? Because they're not, in my opinion. And Scott says, hey, that's a great point. I hadn't thought of that. Amy said the same thing. And so the conversation went on. The answers were all over the place. Here, a startup is, according to so-and-so and Crunchbase, a startup is no longer considered a startup under the following metrics: 100 million in annual revenue, more than 500 employees, a valuation of 2.5 billion or greater. So based on that, Panadoc is a startup, apparently, because they're $1 billion valuation, not $2.5 billion. And as Amy said, that seems like a full-blown company to me. But as you can see, lots of varieties on this. I gave my answer. I said I thought a startup was less than 10 million ARR, maximum Series B, less than 100 employees, and less than 5 years old. And once you break any of those metrics, including being year 6, you're no longer a startup. You're now a scale up, or you're stalled. And there was a positive reaction to that. So there we go. Catherine, how do you define a startup?
Ah, man, that one is interesting. And the whole reason why this conversation is so interesting is just with the LinkedIn list of startups, right? Both for Canada and for the US. These are folks that are way beyond the financial metric, way beyond, any of the financial metrics that potentially you could be considering. They are beyond that. They are beyond the round of investments. They're like, it makes no sense, yet they are top startups, right? So it's just interesting overall, bottom line, how this term is being used at the best convenience of the situation, right? Startup does have a bit of a interesting impact for everyone, right? Like, this startup, and it's a rocket ship, and it's just going up, and everyone wants to work for the concept of that startup. But is it really a startup? That's the question, right? So definitely size would come into play. I think that you are around the right range in terms of number of employees. 100, 150 is still considered, that small organization where culture is still manageable, where you're still, in that early phase of having all the talent aligned. And then the ARR obviously comes into play because that just speaks about the amount of market that you've been able to accomplish, and then the opportunity of that market to keep on growing. So the list is weird. That's what I can say. It's just interesting, again, how the word is being used.
Some people on the list, for those wondering who haven't seen it, I'm just going to give you a couple. You tell me if any of these feel startup-y to you. Gong. Discord. Outreach. Okay, candidly, none of those are startups. I mean, Outreach started in 2013, 14 timeframe, so that's been sort of like 7 years old at least. They're not a freaking startup. They've raised over $500 million. They got a valuation, might be in excess of $2 billion at this point in time. That's not a freaking startup. But you know what this is? This is a great clickbaity article because you're naming all the hot companies, and your post and your article gets a lot of views and shares. Look at us. We're a hot startup. That's what it is to me. That's my opinion. I think this is a media play, not a reality play. So, but there you go, folks. What's the definition of a startup? Jump into the conversation with Amy there on Twitter. It's good conversation to have. Last, I want to bring us home here on the water cooler talk before we get into Ollie's rant. I was part of a live stream this week. Sangram Vajre and Brian Brown have launched this book called Move. MOVE. And if you're wondering, MOVE stands for Market Operations Velocity and Expansion. And actually, I didn't know it meant something until I read the book. Go figure. And what it is, it's the first book I've seen out there that actually explains what go-to-market means and how you do it, and the stages and where you're at, and what does each department need to do, and who owns what, and it gives you a whole framework. And I was, I loved it. I was like, where has this book been all my life? So you should check it out. But anyway, I was on this live stream. Sangram was doing one every single day this week, if I recall, and we were on Wednesday. And Sangram reached out to me and he goes, Daryl, we need representation from a CRO on one of these discussions. Will you join me? It's going to be me and Jill Rowley. Now, if you don't know Jill, Jill's an investor, stage 2. But Jill was involved early on, which a few companies you may recognize. I'll throw them out there. Eloqua, Marketo, HubSpot, Salesforce, just a couple household names.
Not too shabby.
Yeah, not too shabby. She's had some good career decisions. And she knows her crap. She's really, really good. So I'm like, I get to hang. I love Sangram, but I get to hang out with Jill. I'm on. And anyway, Jill made a comment at the end because we're talking about, as we talk about go to market, and wherever it gets hung up on, especially in startups, that's like the theme of today, is the product. Is the product good? Do we have a product fit? Right? Blah, blah, blah. So she said this, and everybody's like, whoa, when she said this. She said, product is good, but what beats product? Go to market. You got the right you can have an adequate product, but you have the right go to market framework and plan and organization, and everybody's executing. That will trump product, which, by the way, explains why not the best products don't always win, because the weaker products have a better go to market. So product is good, but it gets beat by go to market. But go to market gets beat by ecosystem or community. So
ecosystem or community.
So I'll give you an example.
Define that portion.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. It's like HubSpot, massive ecosystem, 40% of their revenue comes from the channel. So you have this community of HubSpot advocates telling everybody, oh, you need HubSpot. Zoom, right? They have everybody, they have the free versions. Slack, they have the free versions. Everybody adopted it because it's free. And then they said, wow, this is freaking great. And then the community starts talking to everybody else, the implicit referral. Have you used Zoom? Have you used referral? And so the community or your ecosystem can be go to market. So think about this. You can have a crappy product. You can have an adequate go to market plan. But if you got community or ecosystem, then boom, off you go. And that was powerful. So that was just noteworthy. I wanted to share it. Catherine, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that it's not about having one and not the other one, or focus here or focus there. Everything is a combination, right? Your product doesn't need to be perfect, because everyone also appreciates that first or that early phase where they are so open for that feedback, because they're going to be applying it even in a more direct and immediate manner than when they are more advanced in their entire journey, right? So that product perfection level, it has to be good to deliver, because then that's where that customer experience comes into play. Because those communities that you're mentioning, that ecosystem is just a result of an amazing experience with the product and the company. So if you, and I love it, and I'm going to tell you why this topic is so, it gets my heart pumping, because we go back into that customer-centric mindset. And the customer-centric mindset, it's not only when they become customers. It's starting from the moment that you're prospecting, getting them to feel they are special. Because I tell that to my SDRs and BDRs all day long. It's like when they see you or receive a note for you, or they have their first interaction with the company, their mindset already goes into, this is exactly how it's going to be, and I want to stay here. So it brings, again, all the groups together, that GTM is now strong and really focused, and customer success is not just the end link, whatever, becomes such an important part of the entire equation, right? Because now these folks are the ones responsible for that recurring revenue, that experience, that word of mouth. I love the premise as well of the, ecosystem, because you and I have been talking about it internally, right? On having those groups and spaces for your own users to bounce ideas around and help each other in their journey, because as well, that's where they appreciate that collaboration, and they go out there and keep on amplifying that voice, that message. So she's totally right.
She's totally right. Jirali, check her out.
GTMs and stuff. Yeah, pretty cool.
Buy the book.
Pretty cool topic.
Buy the book. Move. Amazon. Let's say it right now. Hey, guess what? It's Ollie's rant. Let's do it. Roll that tape.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ollie here with the rant again this week. And this time it's a better situation than usual, but there's still something I'm a bit perplexed about, you could say. So I had an email from a rep, one of the companies that help you send out gifting or personalized gifts, however you want to call it. They did a decent job. So they connect with me on LinkedIn first. I know the email's coming because I've seen this a fair few times now. So I wait for the email and it comes. Decent email referencing past interactions that they have had with our company and previous people in charge of the teams that the guy is talking about. Fair enough. Yeah, cool. And the email's not necessarily relevant to me, but he's asking if the initiative is still alive in some way. And then he puts a nice bit of personalization at the bottom and he says, congrats on changing your role within the team after a year there. Good stuff, or something to that effect. So clearly he's had a look. He's made a bit of effort to personalize. Awesome job on that. What I don't get is, so he made that effort, but what he missed was the person he's talking about that he was previously in contact with has since left. And there is a new team leader in place, not referencing them or sending to them. Maybe they have done, and I'm not seeing this because I only have my inbox, but to do the effort to notice my job change and my work anniversary at the company is good, but surely you're looking straight at the other person, right? Maybe I'm missing something. You guys tell me. What do you think?
All right. So Ollie's rant, Catherine, if I understand it, is this. Let me see if I can paraphrase. He was sent a very good email, well-researched. Everything was tickety-boo, very impressive, from a company who sends, merch services. It could be a company like a Sendosa or an Alice or a PFL or a Postal.io or somebody else reached us. I don't know who it was. He doesn't say. And so, but lots of praise for them. And they even recognize that he changed roles and it's all been within a year. So they researched him. So far he's impressed. It's super personalized. Sam McKenna would be so proud. Show me, you know me. Life is grand. And in the email, he references another person in our organization, except that person's no longer here. And that person's been replaced by another person. And all he's saying, if you took the time to research me, why wouldn't you also research them so you had the whole thing before you reached out to me? And that's where he was scratching his head. So he wasn't complaining. He was actually complimenting them. I think he's really saying it's a drop ball, but hey, what do you think? So, Catherine, you're the sales diva. What do you think?
Man. So that show me that you know me. I love it. Firm believer, again, message that I repeat to the team day in, day out, and that I use for my own approach. And you know that because that's how you and I connected originally. Yep. But anywho, not part of our conversation today. the show me that you know me is not the person alone. And that's where we always fail as professionals. Now we're going into that super high customized email that we forget that they are part of a company. They are part of a team. And it's important to provide that context as well. It's not only about saying like, hey, congratulations on your promotion. Now you help me out. It's like, oh, I bet many changes are happening. We were talking to whatever. I know that person is not around. Maybe you can introduce us to the new person. They just missed that too, right? And it's also just being empathic about what those changes also bring with it. Because if Ollie recently changed and, you know, the person that they used to talk with also changed, then they can also relate in that manner on, I know things are interesting and you all must be evaluating different things. Let's just chat, right? Make it a little bit more of that, human, rather than simply jumping into it and thinking that with one sentence, everything is done. So great start. It's really looking at the bigger picture as well, as always, right? Like, don't get too focused or just don't let your attention go way too much into detail, because you might be missing many of the other pieces that will be able to help you even more. So
let's make this easy. He's on to a valid point. If you're going to name drop, you should check the name out, make sure it's still applicable and nothing's changed. If you don't name drop, because this individual could have said, oh, let's say the person mentioned Catherine. Catherine's still here. This person didn't mention Catherine, but the person could have said, they could have said, you're head of sales, and not mention Catherine by name as an example. So there's workarounds, but it's a valid point. So if you're going to mention them, you should do the legwork. Otherwise, it make you look like a moron. But beyond that, I would say to you, if they're part of the buying committee, and clearly they are, you should be checking out all of the members in the buying committee before you send a single email or phone call with any of the members of the buying committee, so you understand the latest, greatest lay of the land. So
ideally,
we can all learn from this, and Ollie has brought up a good point. Ollie, congratulations, my friend. I think you've added value this week. I think Catherine and I would agree that normally you're just a pain in the behind, and we're still bitter that you made us debate last week. So with that said, my friends, yeah, see, even Catherine agrees. She's shaking her head. So we love you, Ollie. We're done. We're out of here, folks. That's the news on Friday, September 24th. We hope you had fun. Hope you had a great weekend. We'll see you back here next week. Take care. We'll talk to you soon. This is The Drive.